I've known Sam for a few years. I've known of Sam almost since the beginning of when he came to HubSpot. He immediately started blogging, and I started reading some of his material and said, this is one really smart guy. And then my daughter NK went to work for HubSpot, where she works today. In fact, she's hopefully going to be packing off and going to Sydney, Australia in the next couple of weeks to open an office for HubSpot. Sam and MK got to know each other, and she said to me, he's a really smart guy. So I said, well, I'm totally in agreement with that. So when we came to kicking off our series, I wanted a smart person to come here and really kick us off, give us great information. Luckily, Sam was available, and he came and joined us. Is your first time in Burlington?
Yeah.
First time in Burlington. Brought him upstairs to show him the lake last night, and you could see the dock where the ferry comes in. That's about as far as you can see, but finally the clouds lifted. So Sam loves the subject of startups. He's what I would consider an expert in inbound marketing, an expert in a lot of marketing topics. And so enough from me. Please welcome Sam and what he's going to tell you today about marketing for your SMB. Sam?
So thank you very much for that introduction. I don't know if I'd call myself smart, but we'll figure it out. Thank you guys all for coming in. It's a beautiful, warm summer day here in New England. So, I know everybody else would rather be outside in shorts and a t-shirt right now, but we'll have to make do with what we have. Quick survey: who's heard of HubSpot? Oh wow. Okay. That ruined my joke. So, all right. So, who's heard of inbound marketing? Obviously, if you've heard of HubSpot. Okay, great. So we're not going to talk about HubSpot at all. But we are going to talk about inbound marketing and the idea of out-helping your competition, driving traffic to your website. Today specifically, I'm going to talk about lean marketing. So like I said, my name's Sam Mallikarjunan, and I run HubSpot Labs. HubSpot Labs is the internal R&D team at HubSpot. We build all sorts of weird pieces of technology that you might have used, things like the inbound.org community site, and we move really, really fast. We're a very small team. And we're 100% remote. We're spread all over the world. So it's important to us to move quickly, and we have a lot of resources that tend to be similar to what you would see in an SMB, even though HubSpot's a very large company. So if you want, you can find me on Twitter. I'm at Mallikarjunan. I leave it up here for a second or two. I decided a long time ago that if I'm not going to change my last name, I'm going to beat you over the head with it until you remember it. So it is my Twitter handle, it is my website, it is my email address, everything to get in touch with me. I'm also the author of the book, How to Sell Better Than Amazon. It is ironically available on Amazon. I love the fact that they have to pay me a royalty every time they sell a copy. It's just so entertaining. So another quick survey, who has a smartphone? Okay, great. Now, don't lie, I won't be offended. Who is probably going to check their phone sometime in the next 50 minutes? Email, social media, yeah, something like that. So it's really frustrating for a speaker, right? Because the smartphone has access to the entirety of human knowledge and history. So as a speaker, I have to be more interesting than any information that's ever been created in order to keep your attention. 10, 20 years ago, the only thing that I had to compete with, how rude do you want to be in terms of physically walking out of the room and leaving to go do something else? And I can complain about this, and I can get frustrated, and lots of speakers, might whine about this. But it's the reality. It's the reality that I have to deal with. I don't own your attention right now. I'm competing for your attention. I have to be more valuable than anything else you can be doing, which is literally anything. You can be playing Candy Crush, or you can be looking up the history of Henry VIII. Like anything that you want, you can do it right now. And what this has done is it's fundamentally transformed the way that consumers interact with brands and the way that marketing has to reach out to consumers. It used to be a sort of broadcast methodology. So because the channels of distribution were very centrally owned, television, radio, even print, it was relatively straightforward. Like you write a check, you would get some time on NBC, whatever show they had going on, and get your message out to people. Now, as the barriers to entry have come down and technology has gotten easier, there's so much more noise, so much more access to information, that if that's all you're doing is just broadcasting like, hey, look at me, no one finds that interesting. The old model has become completely broken. Most people skip TV ads. Has anybody here ever skipped a television ad? DVR, TiVo, something like that? Yeah, absolutely. Unsubscribing from emails. It used to be you just blast your whole email list 3 times a week with a coupon, call that email marketing, and you're good to go. That's not interesting enough anymore. People either they either unsubscribe or it doesn't even make it into their inbox. It gets caught up as spam, even if it's not spam. Or now we have Google Inbox, which has literally one button that can recognize all the promotional emails and remove all of them from my inbox. Even though I'm a marketer, I still abuse that with reckless abandon. I both love and hate Google. Most of direct mail is never opened, and who has ever gotten a cold call that they loved? Right? Like telemarketers. Right? This is the old way of doing marketing, is you would find something that people really love, a great television show, and then we interrupt it just enough so that people don't stop watching the television show. That was the idea. Or with cold calling, with like, I guess you interrupt dinner, right? Like I'm a pretty big fan of dinner. The idea that that's the time that you want to reach out to me and interrupt my day and that's going to drive value, it's no longer the case. That doesn't work. The new method is, how do we, instead of interrupting experiences that people love, as marketers, how do we create experiences that people love? How do we attract them to our site and build a sustainable business that way? So inbound marketing has had lots of definitions over its years. One of the better definitions is it's a data-driven approach that focuses on attracting people to your site instead of interrupting somebody else's experience, and then converting them into a long-lasting relationship. And again, in terms of what makes it different, the difference is, am I going to interrupt something or am I going to create it? So how does it work? So the inbound methodology is relatively straightforward, right? You want to take these people who are strangers, these people who have never heard of your brand, never interacted with your company. You want to attract them to your site. You can do things like search engine optimization, drive traffic through Google. You can do paid advertising to bring people to your site. You can do social media marketing. There's these ways you bring them into your site. We're going to spend most of today talking about the attract phase, because most small and mid-sized businesses, the problem that you actually have is traffic. How do I get more traffic to my website? How do I get more traffic to my store? I see lots of people who want to do advanced, like predictive analytics to do lead scoring, and they get 100 leads a month. Call all of them if you get 100 leads a month. You don't need predictive analytics and lead scoring. When somebody gets to your website, how do you convert them into a contact? But how do you do it in a way that starts a great conversation? So your contact us form sucks. I'm going to go ahead and say there's nothing interesting about your contact us form. If somebody fills it out, that's actually not a great thing. That means they've done so much research about what you have to sell, about the price points of everybody else that could possibly be competing with you, and they have so much information that you're going into that conversation on the wrong side of the discussion. If you can start the conversation with something that's educational, it's much better for sales. So if you've heard of HubSpot, you may have downloaded one of our ebooks or attended one of our webinars. If you get a call from a sales rep, it's not going to be, hey, Michael, I saw you were on our website. Can I tell you about HubSpot? Let's talk about our pricing. They're going to say, hey, you downloaded the guide to using Pinterest for business. Let's talk about your challenges and let me add value to you, and then move you through a sales process that way. So once you convert them into a contact, you start that conversation with sales, either with a sales rep, or if you're an e-commerce site, your shopping cart, for example, is your sales engine. How do you start that conversation in a way that adds value to the user before you ask for it, and then nurture them to become a customer? Once they become a customer, how do you create, measure, optimize a delightful experience to retain them? So this is really a lot, actually. There's a lot involved that's in this. It's the entire life cycle of a customer's relationship with your brand. And at the end of the day, it comes down to a very simple question. Instead of can you out-interrupt your competitors, it's can you out-help your competitors? Can you create better content? Can you answer questions better? Can you answer questions faster? Can you answer questions in the medium in which your customers are living better than your competitors? And I'm going to tell you something you probably already know. Helping is hard. Anybody here a teacher or know a teacher? Okay. Teaching people is hard. Teaching people, things they don't want to learn is hard. Teaching people things they do want to learn is very, very hard. So I'm not going to tell you that inbound marketing is easy, but I am going to tell you that inbound marketing is going to be the thing that makes your business survive the next 10 years. So, not to offer you but blood, sweat, and tears, and a healthy profit margin. All right, next question. Is anybody in manufacturing? Any experience in manufacturing? Okay, so there's a concept in manufacturing called lean. Lean is the idea of removing waste from a process. So it's removing the movement of materials, the weighting, overproducing things. Like, how do I get the waste out of a process in order to optimize how much it costs me to produce a unit? Lean, there's a great book. First of all, everybody should read it. It's called The Lean Startup. It's by a guy named Eric Ries. What he did was take the lean methodology and apply it to the world of startups. So startups go through a very specific life cycle, right? I have to have an idea, I have to validate that people actually want this idea, I have to grow this idea, I have to run through customer acquisition. Very specific process. The lean startup idea was, how do I remove all of the waste from the process of a startup so I can launch one faster and more people can launch a startup without having to raise a $20 million VC round. Lean marketing is the same way. So you've got to do all this work. You've got to create this awesome experience for your customers that educates and adds value. How do you do that in a way that eliminates all of the waste that you would normally have? How do you do that in a way that lets you test all of these interesting things and all these ideas and figure out how you can solve for the customer better than your competitor, but without having to invest hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands or millions of dollars in campaigns that aren't going to work or maybe just aren't being executed the right way. So I do want to specify, lean does not mean cheap. I'm not telling you to just hire your nephew because he knows the Facebook and how it works. But I am telling you that lean means efficient and lean means fast. So if somebody on your team, if your nephew, for example, told you, I can help you grow your business and I can do it more efficiently and faster than anybody else, you would tell them to shut up and take your money. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more. Lean marketing allows you to invest budget by letting you test ideas extraordinarily quickly. Maybe it's testing ad creative, maybe it's testing, should I be on Pinterest? So we were talking earlier, is my market on Pinterest? How can I test that really quickly before I invest a bunch of money into Pinterest ads or a bunch of money into Pinterest creative? It allows you to iterate and optimize really, really efficiently. Outgrow and outlearn. So lean is, how quickly can I move through the process of learning whether or not something is valuable to me, and through that allow me to out-help my ideal customers better. So today we're going to talk mostly about the attract phase. How do I get traffic to my website? There are a little bit more complexity to this, but in general there are 5 ways that somebody will find your website. For most of the early days of the internet, it was all direct. You literally had to know the address of the server that you wanted to access that piece of content. Then it was, people for the most part would type in, you had to type in your URL. And a fair amount of people still do that. But only if you've created an experience where there's a lot of fresh content and they know that they need to go check it again every single day. Referral traffic is somebody else linking to your website, which, unless you're Microsoft and you're getting just a lot of PR and you're getting people linking to your sites from sites like Free Press Media, it's really because you're doing something interesting. You're creating content on your site that somebody else says, this is interesting enough that I want to share it with my audience. Paid traffic is things like PPC, so if somebody's searching for a specific term, can I try and rank for that term and drive their traffic to my site? There's also social paid. So maybe they're not actively looking for what I have to offer, but maybe they're a relevant audience. So I can put ads on Facebook, I can put ads on Twitter. And then there's other examples of paid, like, for example, media paid, like Free Press Media. How do I get and put my content in front of an audience that's going to be relevant to me? Organic traffic is, how do I get traffic from search engines? So people are using, I think it's something like 1.7 trillion Google searches a year. Most of them are 5 to 7 words or longer. So how do I make it so that if somebody's searching for something, that I am the best piece of content? One of the reasons Google and the other search engines love blogging is because their goal is to serve the best piece of content that they can to that user for the exact thing that they're looking for. So the more specific, we call it the long tail, the more specific you can be, the more likely you are to rank for that specific thing. Although I haven't been to Vermont a ton, I do like to do something called car camping. I have a Toyota Prius, which also makes living in New England hard because you guys got this snow thing. I'm from Florida, by the way, so snow is extremely unusual to me. Fun fact, you can fit a full-size mattress in the back of a Toyota Prius. I found this out because I found a blog article. I was just searching like how to travel the country. My team's remote, so I can travel a fair bit. And lo and behold, some website that sold mattresses had an article that said what kind of mattresses fit in the back of a Toyota Prius. So when I'm searching for that, Google says this is the absolute best person that I should send this potential customer to. In addition to that, there's social media traffic. So social media is not just how can I be the destination, it's how can I have the relationship, how can I be a part of the conversation in a scalable way. Has anybody heard of Dunbar's number? Okay, probably not, unless you're like a psychology nerd. It's the theoretical max number of stable relationships a person can maintain. What social media allows brands to do is have hundreds of thousands of one-to-one interactions with people. So literally like Delta, talking to hundreds of thousands of people. JetBlue is hilarious on Twitter. I complain to them about the weather every time, and they send me like pictures of the X-Men, like Storm, and they didn't mean to send her to Boston. But it's how do I actually create a personified brand? Most people historically have said, how can we seem bigger than we are? We're like the puffer fish, right? We want people to think that we're big and important. In reality, if people wanted to work with somebody big and important, there are usually bigger and importanter people that they can work with. What we want to do, particularly in the small and mid-sized business space, is say how human can we feel? How much of a one-to-one conversation can we have with people? You'll notice a common theme in each one of these, which is that each of them requires content. So I'm sure you have beautiful people working at your company, but your About Us page is not that interesting. Your homepage is not designed to be the best piece of content for a specific person at a specific time. It's designed to be generally applicable. So in order for any one of these tactics to work, you have to create a consistent flow of content. So I've used the word content probably 400 times in between taking breaths so far when I started talking today. The question most companies have and the problems that most people have is they are not media companies, right? We're in a building right now with tons and tons of great writers. You probably don't have that at the company that you work at. There's not a bunch of awesome staff writers and designers and developers who are sitting at your company just waiting around for you to ask them to create media. So one of the things I've had to do at HubSpot Labs is adapt to that, is be extremely lean. So HubSpot has 70 or 80 people on our marketing team. I get to use almost none of them. Because they're all focused on the core product. We're focused on how do we build and test new things and how do we build and test new methodologies. How do we grow our community? So instead of using our blogging team, I've used websites like Xeris. Xeris is a marketplace that lets me hire awesome freelance writers. Lets me see how other people have rated them, lets me see their expertise, get samples of their work. There are tons of marketplaces out there. Xeris just happens to be the one that I really like. Building interactive tools is a great way to add value to people. So I was talking with somebody last night who owns a furniture business. And somebody said, you know what would be awesome? What I have a problem with is knowing whether or not this is going to fit in my room. So if there was a tool, and IKEA has one, but it's terrible, that would let me say, like, this is the dimensions of my room, here's what it is your piece of furniture gonna fit? Like, that's an interesting thing that helps the customer solve problems, helps educates them. But odds are you don't have developers at your company, right? Developers, first of all, are ludicrously expensive. I really wish I could go back in time and like finish out that ASP.NET internship, but instead I went into sales. However, you can do freelancer.com. So freelancer.com, and there are other development websites that allow you to work with domestic coders and foreign coders and ship new, really interesting tools at a relatively affordable cost and do it without having to hire developers. Photos and infographics, particularly in social media, like a picture's worth 1,000 words. How do you get all that done unless you have staff photographers? There is a site called Creative Commons that is literally just millions of people saying, you can use my content for free. My Flickr account, my Google image search. So my website, for example, you can rip any one of my images for free, do whatever you want to it. I don't particularly care. So this is free. Any business can go to Creative Commons and say, like, for this presentation today, I was trying to find a picture of, like, for the helping is hard thing, I was trying to find a picture of somebody lifting up somebody really heavy. Couldn't find that specifically, but it's there. Videos and podcasts, just audio in general. There's a website called Fiverr. It has 2 R's, fiverr.com. It is a website of things people will do for $5. I just transitioned over running HubSpot's Latin American marketing team. I was paying a college student in Nicaragua $5 a week to talk to me for half an hour in Spanish so that I could give a presentation at an event that we were doing in Latin America. It's also really great for getting work just shipped really quickly, right? If interesting videos, interesting audio editing. I did this with, I created a Punish Sam video, so we were testing how much people hate pop-ups on websites. And if you really hated it, you could click this button that would take you to a page where you could punish me. It was just 2 different videos. One had me getting cookies knocked out of my hand, and the other one had you forgiving me with a hug. I got that video edited and made on Fiverr. Turnaround time was about a day. I think the total cost was about $20 or $30. It wasn't too bad. It allows me to move really, really quickly. And then in terms of great design work, there's a website called 99 Designs. I use them a lot for ad creative. I use them a lot for social media pictures. I'm using them to create an infographic. I wanted to use them to work on this presentation, but I didn't quite have enough time. The turnaround time for them can be as low as half an hour. So if I need a banner ad creative made that I want to test, because I'm constantly testing, constantly trying to optimize and improve, they can turn it around for half an hour. Costs me about $14 on average for one of those. So I've talked about blogging. Who here blogs? Okay. Who here blogs at least once a week? Okay. Who blogs 3 times a week or more? Okay. Awesome. So you're way in the lead.
Technically, it's my wife.
Your wife? So
I do it vicariously.
So my dog also blogs way more frequently than I do, but that's a long story. We'll talk about that another time.
Sam,
Yeah.
Are you lumping all customers together, whether it be retail or business, when you present these practices?
So the way that we communicate with people is relatively universal. What changes is, in general, how much of this can you do with how much your customer is worth. So selling iPad covers online, very low margin, very high competition, very high volume. There's some of this that doesn't work for that. But for the most part, if you're a bakery, you can create content. If you're a furniture store, you can create content. If you're a gym, you can create content. That content is there, and the long-term value is worth it for almost everybody. I've had people who are Fortune 500 companies, and I've had people who sold toenail fungus remover. And if the toenail fungus remover guys can do it, anybody can do it. They took the hilarious approach, by the way, which was they had beautiful pictures of summer fashion and then just really exaggerated nasty feet. And they created lots and lots of interesting, hilarious content around that.
Is there a correlation between tactics and the value in terms of dollars or impact the product has?
So you mean how valuable what you have selling versus how valuable the tactic is?
Well, you talk about being lean.
Mm-hmm.
I think more than efficient, you want to be effective.
Right.
It would be helpful to understand for a very small market,
Yep.
high-end product.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of tactics would you use versus iPad covers?
Yeah. So, I worked with a guy who was selling $20,000 rugs, and we can talk more offline maybe if we want to. But HubSpot is not an inexpensive piece of software, right? It's a long decision process, which actually makes it easier, right? Because you can invest more in marketing. There's usually a longer decision process, so education is even more important. Where I'm going to get coffee this morning is actually harder to compete for for my attention using sort of the modern inbound means. So I am going to talk about analytics though. It's specifically a tactic called closed loop analytics. So if I'm going to do a campaign, is it actually driving revenue? All of this factors in, I get a certain number of visits, turns into a certain number of leads, turns into a certain number of customers. That visit costs me a certain amount. How much is that, and is it driving an ROI? We're going to talk about that in a little bit. We've asked that question to a bunch of people, and we've looked at a bunch of data. For example, with blogging, we've said, does it drive an ROI? Just a binary value of yes or no. The vast majority of people who see an ROI nowadays that we've surveyed, and we've surveyed thousands and thousands of people, are blogging at least once a week. The problem is it's hard. It's really, really hard. To create that amount of content, to do that much writing is really, really hard. Most people aren't great writers. My team is really tired of hearing me use the phrase blogging is like jogging, but it's a relatively good parallel. It sucks, it's hard, it takes some time to see results, but unless you invest in it, you're not going to see healthy long-term results. There are people who will try and sell you magic pills and magic shakes that are going to help you lose weight, and they may even work a little bit, but long-term, is it actually going to drive value? Probably not. Sustainable growth is something that you create through creating content that people can discover through the various promotional means that you have. So one of the things that I'm going to talk about more in depth today, I've already sort of talked about it, is whether or not you hire people internally or whether or not you leverage freelance resources. So employees are awesome because they know your customers better. Nobody knows your customer better than you do. They also know the people inside your company that they can ask for help. All of you today should go write whatever the most commonly asked question is, go write a 500-word article explaining it and explaining the history of it and explaining how you give that advice to somebody. Odds are you probably speak 500 words when explaining it to a customer. But the people inside your company know that I should go ask the sales guys, I should go ask the support guys, and I should get those answers. The quality is usually better if you can hire somebody internally. You can sort of control it, and they're very invested in whether or not your company is going to be successful. Freelancers tend to be better at the specific job. So they're somebody who does this one thing, and it's all that they do. It's also a lot more flexible. So have you ever had to fire anybody? Raise your hand if you ever had to fire anybody. It sucks. Right? It's awful. It's an awful experience. You don't feel good about it. Even if like they needed to be fired, like they weren't a good employee, it's still a horrible experience. Firing freelancers isn't so bad because you're not really firing them, you're just like not paying them for that month. And they expect it. Like they know this is the life that they live. They have other jobs that are lined up. So if it's not working, or if there's a budget crunch, or whatever the reason is, you just want to test them and sort of move on, it's way less painful to have to work with freelancers while you're validating, is this going to work for my business? So if you're going to go launch a blog today, you could go hire a staff writer and have them start creating content and writing blog articles every day, or you can just start shipping out content using freelancers, seeing, is it going to work? How much is it going to work? Is it worth it for me to be investing in? It's usually faster turnaround time because the world of freelancers is massive, and the entire world of freelancers is never on vacation. And while it's usually not as good as the content that's going to be created, it's usually good enough to validate whether or not what you were testing is worth it. So to validate whether or not this specific positioning was worth it, to validate whether or not this blogging topic was worth it, it's usually good enough to figure that out. In terms of finding these freelance writers, again, I like to use a website called Xeris. I posted an ad. This is basically a love letter for a micro copywriter. Instead of posting a job, I just wrote sort of in the voice that I wanted. Micro copy is the copy you see on websites where, like, HubSpot will say, like, hey, you look great today. Like, we'll just have that copy in the software, and it's stupid, but it makes you feel good anyway. Don't lie. Usually, if you're doing a job posting, you'll do, benefits and like this is your area of responsibility and everything else like that. The beautiful thing about freelancers is you can be a little bit more loose, have a little bit more fun with it, try and develop a relationship. You probably can't see in the back, and you obviously can't read this text. These slides will be available, by the way. I confirmed that. And there's like 50 slides that didn't make the presentation with math and charts and graphs, so you can get that later. But I wrote like, we miss you even though we've never met. Working on our teams at a life-changing, karma-altering, universe-shifting experience. We're friends, colleagues, and rampant abusers of animated GIFs. That's the pace. It's also the general tone and attitude that I wanted that writer to have. So I wrote something that would sort of attract them. Working with content writers, an important goal is to help them find your voice. How do you want to communicate with your customers? Again, you want to be as human as possible, not just very cold copy. You want to say, like, if I was going to talk to a customer, what is the relationship that I would want them to have with me, and how do I translate that into my brand? When you're working with a freelancer, just like any employee, it's an ongoing relationship. They're not going to know you right from the very beginning, so work with them to find that. Give them examples of work that you really love. It might be news articles, it might be articles you've written, it might be articles your competitors have written, but give them some kind of context. Start with very small jobs. So the universe of freelancers is massive, and finding the one, way harder than dating in my opinion. Like finding great developers, great designers, and great freelance writers. My success rate, the number of people that I have to work with is way lower than the number of people like I can physically go on dates with. What I usually do is I'll assign 100 or so people a tweet. So a tweet, getting somebody to write a tweet is relatively inexpensive, but I say this is my persona, this is the voice I want to have, like this is my industry, write a generally interesting tweet. From that, like 20 of them will make me think, make me laugh, make me smile. I'll give each of them a blog article, small blog article job, and then from that is actually how I found the 4 writers that I have taken with me to every company, not physically. My best writer for e-commerce marketing is a stay-at-home mom in Nashville, Tennessee. She's phenomenal. She never had any background in e-commerce marketing. Her and I have developed it over the years. But I found her through Xeris. She wrote a hilarious tweet. She wrote a great first blog article, and I'm never going to let her go. Give them the research resources that you use. What do you use to answer questions, or where did you find that answer to begin with? Somebody can be a great writer, and as long as you can give them a good amount of context, any moderately competent writer is going to be able to turn that into a good piece of content that answers your customers' questions. And like I said before, once you find a great writer, never let them go. Even if you change companies or do something different, keep in contact with the great writers. I actually send them other jobs, like other people who need freelance writers, just to make sure that they don't actually have to take a real job full-time somewhere, and that they can remain accessible for me when I need freelance writing. So never let them go. They're amazing. I talked a little bit about free tools. HubSpot has a tool called Marketing Grader. Anybody use this? Quick raise of hands. Anybody use this? Awesome. Okay, a couple people. So free tools are interesting, and they're relatively new marketing tactic. We talked about it with the furniture guy, and getting them built can actually be kind of hard. Most of us, does anybody here know how to code? Right? Oh, okay. Interesting number of people. So a small number of people know how to code. Most of you probably don't. I had a guy in Kalamazoo, Michigan, who sold knee scooters. So instead of having crutches, it's this literally this scooter that you scoot along with. And he just built he had actually a college student build a simple JavaScript quiz that walks you through a series of questions and then says you should buy this. And the response from his customers, by giving them a product recommendation based on questions that they've answered, a very simple free tool that he created, was phenomenal. It was something like a 1,500% higher click-through rate on the add to cart button at the end of that quiz versus on the normal product detail pages. Huge increase in conversions. And the difference is because people trust it, right? Like you're helping them. They trust that you're helping them. I'm not sending you this email to buy this product because it's what I have a ton of or it has the highest margins. I've walked you through this process. I've created this tool that's going to help you. However, unless you know how to code, you're going to need to work with some freelance developers. If you're working with overseas developers, be ridiculously specific. So I literally create flowcharts. I want this button to do this. I make it in Paint because that's the extent of my graphic design skills is Microsoft Paint, and show them what exactly I want the app to do. If you can be very, very specific, overseas coders can usually knock it out for you pretty quickly. If you're going to use domestic coders, what you actually want to do is write something called a user story. Or if you're going to use overseas coders that are highly experienced, you write something called a user story. As an X, I want a Y so that I can Z. So as a user debater who is trying to decide what to buy, I want to see which one is most relevant to me so that I can make sure that I'm buying the right one. That's how you work with more experienced coders. Again, always give them examples of work that you love. Include wireframes, even if it's in Paint. Like literally, like I just draw boxes and I'm like, this type of content goes here. And then be honest about what you know and what you can do. I was shipping some Chrome extensions, so a browser will have extensions on it that can sort of do fun things for the user. I didn't actually know how to publish it to the web store, so I made sure that I posted in the job, like, listen, you're going to have to show me how to publish this to the Chrome web store so that end users can actually use it. In terms of design, these top ones are ones that I got done on that 99 Design site that I had. It was great, super easy to test, $14. It tested whether or not the Ask Me button is what I was testing and promoting the AMA, which is an Ask Me Anything session on the Inbound.org community site. So I was testing very specific things, got it shipped very quickly. Stock photos generally suck, just to let you know. Like, most people do not enjoy stock photography. If you're going to use stock photography, make your own. So this is a picture of our CEO, Brian Halligan. That guy's name is Mike Champion. I don't know those two guys. But like, we needed some stock photography, so we had a little photo shoot at our office, and it was very authentic, very human. People really get to know us. It's also a great experience for your employees because then they're superstars, right? They're famous. It feels awesome when the customers really know them and have a relationship. The one exception being this picture with an elephant holding an orange heart-shaped balloon. I do lots of Facebook ads, and I have never beaten the click-through rate on this picture with any other graphic. So this is another case study, and everything that I tell you, test it for yourself. You always want to make sure that you're constantly testing and seeing whether or not this works. Working with images and designers, don't create if you can copy. Use Creative Commons if you can, right? It's fine, it's free, and it's usually pretty good stuff. Stock photos are usually awful. Be very general with designers, so the opposite of developers. Tell them this is how I want this person to feel, this is the message that I want to get across. I want to test these specific elements maybe, but I'm not going to tell you exactly what I want the design to look like. Give them examples, whether it's yours or someone else's, and again, start with small jobs. An interesting tactic that's particularly relevant to you is test your ad creative online before you test it in print. So you can pull, how many people live in Burlington area? All right. You can pull a list of that on Facebook, test 10 different types of ads on Facebook, A/B test them against each other. Say this one had the highest not only click-through rate, but the highest number of people who clicked it and then ended up becoming a customer or filling out my lead form or going to look at the map to figure out how to get to my store. Whatever your conversion is, figure that out and then put that in print. Test online before you do anything else. This is a video that you can see when you download the book, or download the presentation after the talk. This is a video that I had made for my Inbound Commerce, How to Sell Better Than Amazon book. It goes through and explains in 2 minutes what it was and what's the idea, like how are you going to sell better than Amazon. It cost me $100, the turnaround time was 4 days, and it's good enough, right? It's infinitely better than what I had. If it took off and was super popular, I might do a lot more optimization. As it is, right now, I think we've sold like a few hundred copies to people who have actually seen this book. So I'm not going to pay Epifio, who is a studio that does similar designs like this. HubSpot paid them to do a video. It was like more than $10,000, extremely expensive. I'm not going to do that if a basic video isn't at least getting some kind of uptick. Working with video producers, make sure you're starting with your persona. What kind of person am I selling to? Is it somebody who's happy and somebody who I want to like create this exciting feeling in? Is it somebody I want to take it very seriously? Do I want to seem big? You should write out buyer persona stories for yourself, but you should absolutely share that when you're doing video. Define the goal. Is this supposed to help your sales team close leads, or is it supposed to get shared? So we did a case study video with Shortel, big enterprise company, and talked about their growth and everything else like that. That's designed to help sales reps close deals. And then we did another video called What Does the Web Say, which is a parody of the What Does the Fox Say video, and it's a music video of a guy I know named Mike Lemire dressed as a fox, making weird sounds, but it got hundreds of thousands of views, right? It drove buzz. So be sure that you're specifying the goal. Write your script when you're first starting. Again, you know your customers way better than anybody else, so make sure that you're at least giving the first draft to the video person based on what your goals are. Odds are your script will suck. Fortunately, video people are good at working with people who aren't video experts. Don't take yourself too seriously. With the What Does the Web Say video or even the Punish Sam videos, you know, you want to seem human again. Like, you want to ship it quickly. You don't need to have a Hollywood quality production in order to be successful. And then animate complicated concepts. So if you need to explain something, if you need to explain why you're better, and it takes you more than 3 or 5 minutes to explain to it in person, odds are it's going to take way more than that to do it in video. You should use an animated explainer video. It's a good way to do that. At the end of the day, there's nothing at all wrong with outsourcing your job. If you can get people to do your research, if you can get people to test your website, if you can get people to do your social monitoring for you. I love a website called TaskRabbit. If I need to do a bunch of data analysis, or if I need to get a list of all the marketing events in the Northeast for the next 6 months, toss it up on TaskRabbit, have somebody knock it out real quickly, get the job done quickly. There is, anybody know who this, well, I guess I have his name, that's not a very good trick. So Jeff Bezos, he's the CEO of Amazon.com, does a really interesting thing. He puts ads for other people's websites on his product detail pages. He will literally send you to staples.com if he does not have what you're looking for. He will also he was one of the first websites to put bad negative reviews on his site. So people will say, this product is horrible, you should never buy this product. His investors emailed him when he first started doing this and said, you are out of your mind, Jeff Bezos, you're never going to build a big company doing it this way. Haha. You make money when people buy products, why would you discourage them from that? Jeff's response was, I don't make money when people buy products, I make money when I help people make purchasing decisions. All of this is about how can I out-help, how can I out-educate, how can I help people make purchasing decisions. Inbound marketing is continuously evolving. It is not static at all. The way that it was 5 years ago is not the way that it is today. 5 years ago, SEO was just literally stuffing hundreds of keywords in the footer of your website. It's relatively straightforward. Because that was easy, everybody did it, and now it gets harder and harder and harder so that we can filter out the noise and search engines can create an awesome experience for people. Just recently you heard, we call it Mobile-geddon, by the way, which is tons and tons of websites are not mobile optimized, and if you're not, you are in trouble because a lot of website traffic and a growing percentage every year is from mobile devices, and looking at a normal website on a phone is a horrible experience, and so search engines are not going to show it. They're not going to do it. So if you don't have a mobile, like either a responsive, adaptive, or mobile subdomain website, you're about to take a hit in sales and traffic. So it's constantly evolving. What I would encourage you to do is, even everything that I tell you, everything that anybody else tells you, you should absolutely test. Make sure that it works for you, but try it. Give it a shot. Give Pinterest a shot, give Instagram a shot, give blogging a fair shake. Right? Again, blogging is like jogging. If you come to me and say, I blogged 5 times and I didn't make a bunch of money, I will tell you to go jog 5 times and see how much weight you lose. It's not going to work. Make sure that you're constantly working on improving and iterating. The world is changing. Your competition is not sitting still. You shouldn't be either. You should be A/B testing every element on your site, trying to improve, testing the times that you're posting in social media, trying to improve, so that if it's not working, you can kill it quickly. And if it is working, you can make it better. Iterate insanely fast. So we push changes to the campaigns that we run multiple times per day in order to make sure that we are waiting, not waiting too long, not letting the test run way longer than it needs to in order to make sure that we're getting the information that we need. Again, the whole concept of lean marketing is not Sam is saying this will absolutely work for me. It is I'm going to figure out as efficiently as possible with no waste whether or not this is effective, right? Whether or not this is actually going to work for me. This is a tough one, particularly for very smart people. Good enough is better than perfect. You don't need a Hollywood quality video. You don't need a graphic that is just so. You usually need something that is good enough, ship it, test it, and improve constantly. I talk a lot about feelings, love, hearts, make experiences people love. At the end of the day, this is not something that is just for fun. These are businesses, right? We are working on growing and optimizing our business model as business owners. And inbound marketing is not just, so inbound marketing is create marketing people love, right? That's our tagline. But at the end of the day, inbound marketing is the idea that it is more economically efficient to create an experience people love than to interrupt someone else's. This doesn't mean that it's not economically efficient to interrupt somebody else's experience, otherwise there wouldn't be Super Bowl commercials, although they are their own content now because they're usually hilarious. But this is the idea that the amount of money that you will make investing in a blog article is going to be more than the amount of money that you might make cold calling, even if you might get some sales while cold calling. More efficient per dollar is what you're looking at. Again, this is averaged. You should test this for yourself on everything. Small businesses, mid-sized businesses particularly, so if you have 51 to 200 employees, particularly see a massive gap in the money that they're spending on outbound marketing like cold calling versus inbound marketing, which is creating awesome content. You should absolutely measure everything. If you can't measure it, it can't be improved. If it can't be improved, somebody somewhere is working on a bot or a software to replace your job. If that process is as good as it's ever going to get, we will make a robot that will do it for us, and you are going to be out of a job. So you should always be measuring, optimizing, and improving. Also, it's really hard to justify spending money if you can't measure it. I don't remember the exact statistic, but a huge number of CEOs don't think marketing even contributes to the bottom line, which is embarrassing for us as professional marketers. You need to be able to measure I'm driving this traffic and it's going to drive revenue. The old way of doing this was I'm spending money, but I'm making more money than I'm spending, so that's probably a good thing. So I'm spending maybe $500,000 on PPC, I'm spending maybe $60,000 on a PPC firm, spending $120,000 on content. First of all, nobody is spending this much on these things, so I just used round numbers. But the real way to do it, the smart way to do it, is I'm spending X amount of dollars on this specific channel in marketing, and I'm making Y amount of dollars back. So this is what we call a waterfall graph. This is sales and revenue. Each of these colors is a specific marketing campaign or tactic. So teal is social media, and you can drill in and look at that. You can see paid in there. You can see email in there, which is the orange at the bottom. This is the amount of money that I'm making off each of these tactics, and I know whether or not this campaign is driving revenue. Again, with measure everything, like if you're going to spend, the way it works, the way you look at it, right? This is what your model looks like. It's a funnel. How efficient can you make this funnel? If you spend $1,000 on a campaign, maybe it's getting 10 blog articles at $100 a piece, although that's kind of expensive, but you never know. You get 500 website visits. Okay, each of those visits cost me $2. If I have a 5% visit to lead conversion rate, my cost of lead acquisition, COLA in the middle there, is $40. And if I turn 10% of those leads into customers, my cost of customer acquisition is $400. Odds are you're either saying to yourself, that's awesome, and I wish that my cost of customer acquisition was that low, or you're saying to yourself, that's ludicrously high, and I could never spend that much. The actual numbers here don't matter. What matters is the way that you look at it. The fact that you're measuring the money into the machine and the money out of the machine, and figuring out where there's leverage. If this number was maybe 1%, then we should invest in conversion rate optimization. Calls to action, A/B testing landing pages, turning more visits into leads. If both of these numbers are great, then it's just how do we grow the top of the funnel? We blog more, we do more paid advertising, we do more search engine optimization, we do more engagement in social media. Again, it's not the actual numbers, but it's how are you looking at the model. Be sure that you compete in the research phase. The purchase phase is people who already know what they want to buy. Going after them is really, really hard because it's very easy. So everybody else is doing it. Amazon is really great at marketing to people who know what they want to buy. You know that they will have the lowest price if you just go to Amazon. So the research phase is when somebody is sort of trying to figure out what it is that they're going to need. So I decided a while ago I was dating a pretty awesome girl, and I wanted to get married. I wanted to propose to her. However, if you want to know, like, the atomic weight of phosphorus or the formula for a correlation coefficient, I'm your guy. If you want to know what jewelry to buy, I'm not your guy. Fortunately, somebody out there had the guy's guide to buying jewelry. I was literally Googling, like, how do I decide what engagement ring to get? And somebody had this. They asked for some information about me, which they then, if you're a smart marketer, this isn't just somebody filling out your form. This is predictable, forecastable revenue. So a certain number of these people that fill out this form will turn into customers. And you can plot that as predictable revenue. So for example, if the ring was going to be $100, it wasn't, but if the ring was going to be $100, and 10% of the people who download this ebook end up buying it, then each of their downloads is worth $10. The job of the marketing team then is to sort of, if the green line is my sales goal, the blue line is how much I'm driving in pipeline revenue each month, to make sure that I'm filling up what are the sales goals for the company. This is how a modern marketer looks at their job. The beautiful thing about this is it's self-regulating. If instead they had the guy's guide to sports, cool, maybe you got a lot of stuff, or the guy's guide to correlation coefficients, you would have gotten me anyways, right? Like, I like math, I'm a huge nerd. I wasn't the cool kid in school, obviously. But nobody would have turned into a customer. So the value per download would have absolutely tanked. So this keeps marketers honest, make sure that we're aligned with the sales goals. And in case you're wondering, yes, like, I downloaded their ebook, and yes, they nurtured me with a bunch of emails until I made a decision, and yes, I ended up buying the ring, as I said from them, and yes, she said yes. What I want to impress upon you is, and I know this is going to sound cliche, but this is, oh, that's our dog. She was the maid of honor. This is one of the most interesting periods in all of the history of business, right? The Industrial Revolution, yeah, pretty cool. The modern assembly line, very, very, very interesting. What's happening now, and the fundamental shift in the relationship between consumers and brands, and the ability that we have to communicate and educate and help people is phenomenal. And it is turning people into platforms of messaging and information that have never existed before. You could all go today and blog, and you all have the potential to be seen by millions of people, literally today. You don't need to go pay anybody. The universe is there. We live in an era of what we call big bang disruptive innovation. So it used to be like the small guy typically got crushed by the big guy. Like, you could just get outspent. You did not have the resources to be competitive. Now we live in an era, we were talking about a company called Uber earlier, or a company called Airbnb, another great example. We live in an era where companies don't get disrupted in decades or centuries, right? Like, maybe the phonograph took several decades to get disrupted by better audio technology. It happens in years, or sometimes even months, that a company can find itself disrupted by a better, more efficient competitor who is solving for the customer, who is out helping them. This is what life used to look like for new technologies. You would have, a few people in the beginning, and there's this like nice, smooth, long curve that's extremely predictable. The way it is now is, instead of having this nice, smooth, long curve, it's really, really quick. So going viral, first of all, is not something you should ever try to do, because it's impossible to artificially influence. You want to be authentic and try and solve for the customer, and it may or may not happen. Going viral, because you don't necessarily want to go viral. What you want to do is out-solve for the problem. Something a little bit scary for people is, we live in New England. I'm from Florida. The oldest thing that we have is like 60 years old, unless you go up to St. Augustine or something like that. Literally, the people in Florida are older than most of our buildings. In New England, you guys are different. You have a lot of institutional companies, some that have been around for generations. That doesn't mean that they're going to be around a lot longer. If you've been around 100 years, it doesn't mean you're going to survive the next 10. And I don't mean to scare you. Well, I do mean to scare you, but I mean to scare you productively, constructively. My hope is that you come out of this realizing that there is a fundamental transformation in how consumers are working with brands, and it's not impossible for you to tackle. You can start today, literally today, testing methodologies that will help you out-help your competitors and create an awesome experience. By the way, anybody in Lord of the Rings fans? Everybody get that? Okay, cool, awesome. 70% of businesses on the Fortune 1000 are new within the last decade. That is freaking terrifying, right? Imagine being a Fortune 1000 company and getting displaced by somebody who's less than 10 years old. Maybe you've been on that list for decades. There's an old curse that says, "May you live in interesting times." We live in extremely interesting times. So did the dinosaurs. The dinosaurs lived in a very interesting time. It was arguably more interesting for the primates that survived than it was for the dinosaurs. And we are in one of those mass extinctions of particularly old, established businesses And what's causing that is the ability for you personally, as a marketer, as a business owner, to have a platform where you can out-help instead of out-interrupt. So I know a lot of this sounds daunting, it sounds very tough. I'll make one more Lord of the Rings joke because, again, giant nerd. What you can do today is define your buyer personas, go write a blog article today that answers the most commonly asked question that you get. Don't worry about it being perfect. You have 0 subscribers if you're starting to blog. Who are you trying to impress? Your friends and family will love you anyways. Like, just write an article that you think answers a question that you hear a lot. It doesn't have to be amazing. When I talk about the balance of power, you know, it used to be, I love shopping for cars now. It used to be a horrible experience because you would go, the sales rep would like give you some information, and it turns out like if you haggled well enough, you could actually get a much better deal on that car. And I hated that because I'm an introvert and I don't like to haggle. It's not really my thing. Now, by the time I go to the car dealership, I have so much more information than he does. I know what his company paid for that car. I know what people 10 towns over paid for that car. I know whether or not that car is going to be replaced by other cars very soon. I don't have to. He's not the gatekeeper of information. You are not the gatekeeper of information. If somebody's filling out your contact sales form, it's because they have more information than you. The difference is now the consumer has all of the information. And you can either let them finding that information be owned by somebody else, or they can find it through you. And it's going to fundamentally change the relationship that you have with your customers. It is weird for me. I work at HubSpot. This is a guy, I'm hoping and I'm pretty sure that's a temporary tattoo, but that's the HubSpot sprocket, that's our logo. People love us. As a marketer, people email me to make sure that they're on our email list. Like if we miss a day, we will get emails from people being like, hey, did I get unsubscribed? What happened? It is a weird experience because they're really looking forward to it. Because we're creating this content that they love, because we're creating this content that they're looking forward to. And the way that you interact with your customers is never going to be the same. All right, thank you.